The organization was founded by Pharrell Williams 5 years ago to not only close the opportunity and wealth gap, but create uninterrupted pathways to entrepreneurship and through entrepreneurship for diverse entrepreneurs. Culture is their asset. And so being able to package that up and then being able to turn that into a product, into a service that then creates wealth, I think is also the opportunity if we look at it as opportunities. I think we're also in this right moment where Miami gets to define that. And I think we define it and we continue to refine it and go back to it every single year to look for where the opportunities for growth are.
Welcome to Opportunity Miami. This is a place where we talk about bold ideas, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And I can't think of a better person to help us dive into this conversation than Felecia Hatcher. Welcome, Felecia. She's the CEO of Pharrell Williams Black Ambition. So happy to have you here today.
Thank you for the invitation, Dr. Paula.
So the journey to Black Ambition,
Yeah.
You've done a lot of things. I know some of the story, probably not all of it, but what I'd like for you to do is tell us what brought you to Black Ambition.
Yeah. I mean, I've done a lot, right? So tech, coding camp, ran a food startup, created, and then also sold a conference, and have been really kind of spending the past, I'd say 10 plus years ecosystem building, right? And so not only creating opportunities for brands to engage with startup founders and communities, but then also those entrepreneurs to really kind of like step into like their genius and then bring that to their families, their revenue, but then also our communities. And so the journey to Pharrell, I mean, the simplest way to put it is it started with a conversation with his chief of staff and then also a local kind of funder here at a lunch in Wynwood, very random, that turned into quite a few series of meetings that then turned into me coming on and accepting the role as CEO of Black Ambition Opportunity. And but the organization was founded by Pharrell Williams 5 years ago to not only close the opportunity and wealth gap, but create uninterrupted pathways to entrepreneurship and through entrepreneurship for diverse entrepreneurs. And we've been able to invest in entrepreneurs in tech, healthcare, consumer goods, media entertainment, and then also AI. We've invested in 131 really amazing companies from all over the United States. And then 2 years we started international expansion. And so we've been invested in entrepreneurs in France, in Ghana, in Rio, as well as Cartagena, Medellin. And then I'm literally coming from Tanzania, where we also supported some entrepreneurs there.
Wow, what an amazing story. So when I think about all of that you just said, whether it was domestic or internationally, you're breaking down barriers.
Yeah.
Tell me, what are some of the consistent barriers or obstacles that you see when you talk to people trying to bring them into their genius?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I talk about the barriers all the time, right? And I think oftentimes when we're talking about diverse entrepreneurs, we immediately go to what is the problem instead of saying like, what is the opportunity? And so I would love to lean in there because this is literally called like the Opportunity Podcast. And so I think there are a lot of very unique opportunities that are presenting itself even during this climate of uncertainty for entrepreneurs, from the tariffs to the anti-D&I and the effects of that, and entrepreneurs having to navigate, right? One of the biggest things that has always been an opportunity is culture is their asset. So whether we see that from a music standpoint, a content creation standpoint, and then what that influence has done not only for the United States, but Miami, but then really across the globe. And so I don't think there's an area in which you can see where there hasn't been a fingerprint on a culture or a community or a continent that has not been influenced by diverse entrepreneurs. And so being able to package that up and then being able to turn that into a product, into a service that then creates wealth, I think is also the opportunity if we look at it as opportunities. And then I think leaning into where there's pockets of influence and pockets of wealth for diverse entrepreneurs is the other thing for us to think about. And then I think when you're talking about South Florida, you look at the healthcare industry, right? There's massive opportunities that exist for diverse entrepreneurs to not only build businesses in that space, but then also build the innovation of tomorrow that we can lean on. I think AI is another thing that everyone is talking about AI. But when we go back to culture, like ancestral intelligence is also something that we can lean on and be able to leverage. So take what we've known, the history of being griots and storytellers and culture and carriers of culture, and then use that and match that with commerce to increase opportunities in our communities that need it the most. And I would say like the last thing around that, Dr. Paula, is, you know, when we looked at what happened during the pandemic, right? All the stats were thrown around that Black and brown businesses, like 40% of them did not survive. What is not talked about is 60% of them did survive. If we tell the story differently, then we can say that, hey, 60% of businesses were equipped to survive one of the hardest economic downturns of our generation. And so if we already had 60% of our businesses ready to survive, yes, there's work to do with the other 40%, but what do we continue to do to grow and scale the 60% that survive one of the hardest times economically for businesses, but specifically for diverse businesses? And so the innovation and opportunity is presented even just looking at that.
I think that once we start changing the narrative, like that sounded so much more positive, right?
Yeah.
I think about the idea of culture. I think you said a community and content. And that brings me to Fundable Founders Learning Lab. And we did it right here in Florida.
Absolutely.
Right, Miami's special. Florida, we bring them all in.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's a 2-year program and 2-year initiative that we started. Again, Black Ambition has been all across the United States supporting entrepreneurs and then expanding internationally. But I'm a Florida girl, right? Like, not only am I from here, from South Florida, but I've called Miami home specifically for the businesses and initiatives that I've run. And so being able to bring some really unique partners together in order to support entrepreneurs here in the state of Florida, but definitely with a primary focus on Miami, is why we created the Fundable Founders Program, right? And so that is a digital program so that we can make sure that the access was available to everyone and geography in the state wasn't a problem for people. And then we brought some really great partners, right? So not only like Pharrell's vision on doing this here, he's also based in, between Paris and Miami, but based here in South Florida, but then also more than anything, bringing together our partners, Dom with Act House, which is an accelerator that deploys capital to entrepreneurs, and then also Gamal and Co., which is a phenomenal husband and wife team that have bought and sold multiple 6- and 7-figure businesses in the e-commerce space. So taking like the genius of those two organizations in partnership with us in Black Ambition and saying, we're gonna create the most dynamic program possible, digital first, in order to support these entrepreneurs that are growing, scaling their businesses during really unique times, and then making sure that they have all the tools and the mentorship and not only the skill set and the tool set, but the right mindset around all of this to build fundable companies, right? And so those that are growing and scaling, but then 2, those companies that are ripe for funding, even though in this unique environment. And so being optimistic about like this 10-week program that we've put together is also saying, all right, at some point the economy is going to turn in our favor. And we want to make sure that those entrepreneurs are ready with the right skills, the right community, and the right support in order to be able to hit and be a part of that upswing.
We talk a lot about the next 5 and 10 years. From your vantage point, how do you define success over the next 5 or 10 years? And what things will tell us that we're down the right path?
That's a hard question to answer in this environment. So from a policy standpoint, we've seen some significant changes that stand in the way. Again, I'm going to kind of hark back on like the tariffs and what that does to businesses that had their whole roadmap together of what this year was going to look like. And for that to be kind of uncertain day to day is very hard for businesses, right? And so I think for us, looking at what the opportunities or what the next 5 to 10 years look like in Miami, I think we're also in this right moment where Miami gets to define that. And I think we define it and we continue to refine it and go back to it every single year to look for where the opportunities for growth are. I think if we are not prioritizing not just like AI, but like the infrastructure and the educational support around that to make education attainment better, if we can prioritize the opportunities that are available from a workforce standpoint, and then from a small business and entrepreneurship standpoint, and then layer that on with the best and brightest of technology, innovation, and then people, I think we'll really be on to something. I think that's the worst case scenario. I think if we don't prioritize any of that, it will look like and feel like what it currently feels like, as like the environment feels very uncertain for us. But I want to be optimistic about the possibilities if we really kind of concentrate on the strengths that have always existed in Miami. We have world-class ports, we have a thriving technology ecosystem, and I think what you saw from a tourism standpoint, not just people that are coming here to vacation, but during the pandemic, you had a lot of people relocate here to Miami. Right. And so retaining those people here and making sure like the environment is conducive for them to be able to do business and then also network is extremely important. And then I think like that last part is relationships, right? Miami thrives on relationships and leveraging trust. I think the very first conversation that we had is when you were at Pepsi, and it was just like, Felecia, what do you need help with? Mm-hmm. That was the very first, we didn't even really have a relationship at that time. We were just getting to know each other. And so that willingness to say, Felecia, like, I'm here to help you, support you, help you navigate, like maybe the organization that you were in to find opportunities in support of your entrepreneurs, like that's priceless. And we need more of that in the culture of Miami if we're gonna not only survive, but definitely thrive as a city and as a community.
Yeah, that's awesome. So my other question was really about, let's talk about Miami.
Yeah.
So you forgot to say the ice cream shop. Like I'm an ice cream connoisseur, and how that first started.
I'm trying to lose weight. That's why I don't talk about my ice cream business anymore.
But when I think about Miami, and I've been here now for 15 years, so you got me in the middle of my journey here. And what's really awesome about it is that it's such a unique place.
Yeah,
right?
Very much so.
A lot of heart, a lot of hustle. When you think about innovation, entrepreneurship, what makes Miami that more special than any other place that you could have been in?
Ooh, that's interesting. You know, I started my first like real business here in Miami, right? Like when you talk about ice cream, Feverish Ice Cream was a company that my husband and I like started in Delray in my parents' backyard, right? And quickly realized like all the opportunities for business, especially with corporations, was in Miami. So we either got to figure this out or we have to relocate if we want to find the opportunities that align with our business. And like building a company with like Uber and PayPal and Whole Foods and Aveeno Lotion, like a Fortune 500 client roster that would absolutely make your head spin, was just like a very unique niche in which we found, like we created in our business. But we were able to utilize any and every possible resource and opportunity here in Miami. And I say that now, and I can say that with pride, but that was also very hard to navigate, not having any connections, not having any resources, not fully understanding the landscape or the culture here, and literally having to make something out of nothing. So what that means is we made a lot of mistakes before we really started to see success and wanted to close the doors quite a few times along that journey. And so I say all of that because that was our journey, but I think it also presents just a really unique culture here. Miami is one of those places, and I always make this joke that people say that, you know, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. I'm like, oh, absolutely not. If you can make it in Miami, you can make it absolutely anywhere, because it's a culture of vibrancy, right? There is a uniqueness based off of the people that are here, but it's also very challenging if you're not from here, right? And so I think there's this culture here that like you kind of have to be tested, even if you are also from South Florida, right? So no matter where you come. And so being able to navigate that and kind of really establish trust by doing good work and then being a part of the ecosystem. And so I always say to people, like, before you extract from the ecosystem, because it's immediately what people want to do, before you extract from the ecosystem, figure out ways in which you can contribute to the ecosystem. And when you can be a good player here and you are committed to kind of contributing, you have a really good life here and you can build a very good business. But I think some of those things of making sure we hack trust and create an environment of trust, create a tolerance to risk is the other thing, right? We're talking about capital that needs to be allocated to entrepreneurs. That requires a level of trust that sometimes we don't necessarily see, but something that we can definitely kind of create and leverage. And then I think there's just a number of really amazing big institutions that we find in our colleges and our universities that we can pull more into, contribute to the ecosystem so that everyone gets the benefit from the idea flow and then also the deal flow.
My last question, and then I wanted to we got a lot of dreamers.
Yes.
And so I was talking earlier about you, of course, which I do often. And I said, you're not just investing in people that are trying to scale business, doing mentorship. Obviously, allyship will help different companies, bringing them in, but you're also scaling dreams.
Yeah.
And that matters. And when the dream is right and it's a right fit, you actually get the benefit throughout the entire community.
Absolutely.
So tell me your younger self, Fever's ice cream, if you want to use that example, you can.
Yeah.
What would you tell that dreamer that's potentially sitting in Overtown, Hialeah, Homestead, and he or she or they are listening today? What would you tell them?
I would tell them, don't apply for that credit card in college. I would tell them that, honestly, that would be my honest answer, because it defined the first few years of adulthood for me. I would tell them to find a way to stay and grow in Miami. And I cannot stress that enough, because I think if you get very creative with who you are and what is here, there are massive upside and swing here. And you can look at the shiny objects in any other city, but like the pathway some way or another always leads back to Miami. And so it would be that, right? Like, find what your genius is. Get rid of what your zone of incompetence, competence, and zone of excellence is. Find what your very unique genius is, what makes you a one of one, and do that here. And then use what is your true and unique genius, and then do something that contributes and make this city and this state just a phenomenal place to live and be in. It requires work. It's not going to be easy. It's going to punch you in the gut a few times. It's going to battle test you. But I think if you can tap into your genius and what makes you unique, you also get to tap into the very unique genius of what makes Miami, Miami. And I think when we all do that, then, like, you know, the tide and everything shifts in our favor as an economy that we can boast about, but then also feel really safe to be able to build and dream in.
Here at Opportunity Miami, we say we want to imagine and create and shape the future we want. And just like I met you 15 years ago, I'll say it again. If there's anything I can do to support not just being an ally, but having some action, make sure you know that not only Paula, but also Opportunity Miami and the Miami-Dade Beacon Council is here for you.
Thank you. Y'all have been phenomenal over the years, and so thank you.